Welcome to the Beyond You podcast, where we have real conversations about healing, trusting yourself again, and building the kind of relationships that actually feel good. I'm Samantha, and if you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like you're doing all the right things but still feeling disconnected, you're in the right place. Because here we go beyond the surface, beyond the hurt, beyond the patterns that keep you stuck. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Welcome back. I'm so grateful you're here with me today because before we dive in, would you take a deep breath with me? I think a lot of times we go through so much on autopilot that we don't take time to be there for ourselves. So I just want you to land in this moment in your body, wherever you are right now, because today we're having a conversation that I've been just kind of sitting with for a while. One that feels especially important in a world that sometimes confuses escaping pain with actually healing from it. And a lot of times we don't know the difference. A lot of times we just kind of keep going throughout life and thinking that we're healing because we take time. Maybe we'll take time away from dating, or we take a time away from family, or whatever that is. And we're not healing from it. We're just numbing. We're just not addressing it or not wanting to talk about it. And so a lot of times know the difference. So here we are. We're talking about what that difference looks like. So how to know if you're truly healing or just numbing. I want to start by saying, if you've been doing some version of numbing lately, understand that I see you. I'm not here to judge that or make you feel bad about it, because truth be told, we've all been there, including me, and sometimes numbing is the only way we know how to survive a season of our lives, especially when we find out news we weren't expecting about parents or things that we just find out that are new or different, or this kind of make us feel a certain way. And so I'm not here to judge at all or make you feel bad about it, because sometimes numbing is the only way we know how to survive, like I said. So it's the pause button our systems need when the pain feels too overwhelming. And there can be wisdom in that pause for a lot of us, but there's also wisdom in recognizing when that temporary survival strategy has become a permanent way of living. And this is where I come in, right? To let you kind of see exactly there's other ways, and how do you know when you're actually doing the healing work. So when what once protected you, right, was being survival mode, is now preventing you from experiencing the fullness of your life, your relationships, and your own heart, we really need to be able to work on that. So today we're exploring the subtle and not so subtle differences between healing and numbing, and we'll talk about what true healing actually feels like in your body, the surprising ways numbing shows up beyond the obvious ones, and how to gently move from simply surviving your pain to actually transforming it. I talked a lot about this in my newsletter that I send out every Wednesday. So you can be able to honor newsletter. We talk about different things every week. And I've noticed this came a lot within just sessions and people asking me questions. And I want for you to know just the difference between it all. And so I want it to be where we're simply not just surviving your pain, I really want you to transform it, right? So you really can have those authentic relationship with yourself and other people. So this is a conversation I wish someone had with me years ago, when I was confusing being fine with being well, and when I was mistaken the absence of small acute pain for the presence of genuine healing. So grab your tea, get comfortable, and let's dive into this heart to heart together. And if you have any questions, make sure to let me know in the comments so I can make sure to answer your questions. If whether you're in my TikTok or Instagram, I'll make sure to answer your questions. And so I wanted to just tap into this one. So what does true healing actually feel like? Okay. And so before we can distinguish between healing and numbing, we need to understand what genuine healing actually feels like, because a lot of times nobody talks about it, because many of us have never been taught. True healing isn't the absence of pain. It's not about never feeling hurt, triggered, or challenged again. No, when I even have my sessions, know that it's not about never feeling again. Like, you wouldn't be human. I would be concerned if you weren't feeling again. It's about you allowing yourself to develop a new relationship with your pain, where it is no longer controls your life or defines your identity, right? And so you're able to see challenges just kind of like the ebbs and flows of things versus kind of taking out your whole day, your whole life, right? And so when you're truly healing, you might notice you can acknowledge painful feelings without being completely overwhelmed by them. Right? There's a sense of this hurts and I can hold it, right? So we feel more comfortable with the feeling of hurt, which a lot of people try to avoid, right? What is the number one thing we tend to say? I don't want to be hurt again. But it's not possible to not ever be hurt again, but we can get a new relationship with hurt so you don't feel like it's this big thing on your shoulders. Okay, so I don't want you to ever feel like you're understand that you're not drowning in the emotion, but you're also not pushing it away. So it's kind of like just allowing yourself to fully accept it. So you start recognizing patterns in your responses rather than just reacting on autopilot. Right? This is how you can start telling. There's a small but significant pause between the trigger and reaction, a space where choice becomes possible. A lot of times when things happen to us that trigger us, we go to the immediate choice before. I had some individuals where it was on hurting themselves, or some people is shutting down and not going into that person or talking to the person again. We're trying to give you other choices besides that, so you can just understand that healing process. Also, your emotions move more fluidly like water rather than getting stuck. You might feel sad or angry, but those feelings flow through you rather than becoming stagnant pools you can't navigate beyond. Okay, those are all things you will start to notice as you start healing. And some of you who've worked with me already probably notice these things that I'm talking about. So that means you're just definitely doing that process. And so you also develop growing compassion for yourself as well, including the parts of you that are struggling or have made mistakes. And there's less harsh self-judgment and more gentle understanding for all that you've gone through, which is needed through this process. And perhaps most importantly, healing often feels uncomfortable. Right? The main thing is you feeling comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's rarely a smooth, linear journey of feeling better each day. Like true healing involves facing what you've been avoiding, feeling emotions you've pushed down, recognizing patterns that no longer serve you. Like this is all part of that healing process. Because I remember a moment in my own healing journey after a difficult breakup. For months, I'd been saying, and we've all done this, I'm over it. And filling my calendar with activities, convincing myself I was moving forward. But one day, just sitting alone in my car, a song came on that cracked me open because all I could think about was this person. And I found myself sobbing, really feeling the grief I've been outrunning. And that's ever happened to you where like there's one moment where it just hits you after numbing it for years. And so that moment, messy and painful as it was more healing than all the months of staying positive. And I'm putting quotations on that one, staying positive combined. Okay, because if I was finally meeting my actual experience rather than the experience I thought I should be having. And I think there's a big gap within that is because we feel like we should be feeling a certain way, so don't allow ourselves to actually feel what's going on. So for many of us, especially just women of color, just in general, you've often been taught to be strong at all costs, right? To keep going no matter what. There can be additional layers to this as well. We might have grown up seeing the women in our lives push through incredible hardships without showing vulnerability. We might have inherited the message that falling apart simply wasn't an option. And that strength, that resilience is powerful, but sometimes can lead us to confuse endurance with healing, to mistake surviving for thriving. So true healing has room for both strength and vulnerability, right? That and there, strength and vulnerability, both resilience and rest, both moving forward and honoring what has been lost. Like both can be true within this process. So I want to ask you, when was the last time you allowed yourself to feel something difficult without immediately trying to fix it, escape it, or push it away? When was the last time you treated your pain as a messenger rather than an enemy? And really allowing yourself to think about that, because a lot of times we do this and don't even realize it, because that willingness to be with your own experience, uncomfortable as it might be, is where healing actually begins. And so then we want to go through the signs you're numbing and not healing. So let's talk about some clear signs that you might be numbing rather than healing. And trust me, I share these with so much compassion because I've lived every single one of them. Okay. And I went deep in this when I had my newsletter. So I'll see if I can be able to give kind of access to that, but it's all here, right? So definitely get in my newsletter so you can kind of get more kind of overall tips like these. So number one sign is you're reaching for distractions more than connection. If you find yourself scrolling endlessly through social media, binge watching TV shows, or zoning out with alcohol or other distractions, it might be a sign you're avoiding dealing with emotions. Because true healing involves sitting with your feelings, even the tough ones. I remember after a particular painful friendship ending, my screen time suddenly doubled. Right? A lot of times that happens when something is just kind of gone within our lives. I'd pick up my phone first thing in the morning. It would be the last thing I see at night. And in between any moment of potential stillness got filled with scrolling. It wasn't conscious at first. It just felt like I needed to get through the day. But Here's what I realized is that distraction isn't inherently bad. It's just sometimes we generally need a break. But the question to ask yourself is, am I using this to temporarily rest from processing something difficult? Or I'm using it to completely avoid dealing with what's underneath? For example, when you feel triggered, instead of diving into distractions, how about you try this? Try taking a moment to check in with yourself. Are you avoiding something deeper, or are you truly processing what's coming up for you? Sign number 2, you're better, but only on the surface. This one is subtle, but so important to notice. You might be able to get through your day without crying or feeling overwhelmed. You might be able to smile and even have fun sometimes, but underneath it all, you might still feel empty or numb. If you're not checking in with yourself and simply pushing through without addressing what's really going on, that's not healing. Healing involves getting to the root of your pain and not just pretending it's gone. I see this so often with people I've worked with, just with my clients who are high achievers. They're functioning so well, meeting all their responsibilities, maybe even exceeding expectations in their work or relationships. But when we go a little deeper, I see that there's a disconnection from their emotional experience, a sense of going through the motions without really being present. And so I want you to be present within your life, right? Like, that is what life is about, for you fully being present, fully experience all of what life has to offer. So I want you to really want to ask yourself, are you really reconnecting with yourself, or are you just trying to avoid feeling too much? Okay, then we're going to go into sign number 3. You're still relying on old coping mechanisms. One of the most telling signs is whether or not you're still relying on the same old ways of coping with pain is things like overworking, people pleasing, or avoiding conflict. These behaviors can feel comfortable because they've been your go-to strategies for a long time, but they often prevent you from truly healing. Real healing is about replacing those patterns with healthier ones, like setting boundaries, expressing your emotions, and practicing self-care. If you're still leaning on old habits, take a moment to ask, what's holding me back from creating new, healthier ways to cope? And I'll be vulnerable with you, because my default coping mechanisms has always been overworking. When I'm hurting, I dive into projects, I extend my working hours, I fill every moment with productivity. And for years, I mistook this for healing. But look how much I'm accomplishing. I must be doing better. But really, I was just outrunning my feelings, right? Using work as a socially acceptable way to avoid facing what was painful. Sign number 4, you're not feeling your emotions, you're pushing them to the side. Sometimes we think you're healing when we're simply pushing emotions to the side. True healing means feeling your emotions as they come up, even if it's uncomfortable. For example, instead of just identifying that you feel sad or angry and moving on quickly, allow yourself to experience those feelings. Sit with them, understand where they're coming from. I had a client who would say, I know I'm angry about what happened, but she'd say it with complete emotional detachment. Right? A lot of times we say that because we're trying to like logically think our way through it is how we can tell. And it was like she was describing the weather, the way she was talking about it. And there was an actual intellectual recognition of the emotion without actually allowing yourself to feel it in her body. So I want you to be able to ask yourself, are you truly processing your emotions, or are you just moving through them quickly so you don't have to face them? And sign number 5, you've got the right words, but not the right actions. This one hits close to home for many of us in healing and personal development spaces. It's easy to say the right things when it comes to healing, right? I'm working on myself, I'm doing better. But if your actions aren't reflecting this inner work, you might just be numbing. For example, if you keep telling yourself that you're ready to move on from past trauma, but continue to find yourself stuck in the same unhealthy patterns, then the words aren't aligning with your actions. Healing requires changes in behavior, not just in your mindset. I've done this too, adopting all the language of healing without actually doing the deeper work. I could talk about boundaries beautifully while still saying yes to things that drained me. I could discuss the importance of self-care without running myself into the ground. When we have the language without the lived experience, we're essentially performing healing rather than embodying it. So understand, for you, you've navigated trauma, systematic oppression, or environments where your fully humanity wasn't always welcomed. Numbing might have been completely reasonable, even necessary survival strategy. The issue isn't that you found ways to endure. what was at times unbearable. The issue is when those strategies outlive their usefulness and begin to limit your capacity for the full, vibrant life you deserve. So I invite you to reflect with gentleness though, right? Where in your life might you be using numbing strategies? What emotions or truths are you finding it hard to face? And what might be waiting for you on the other side of that avoidance? So the surprising signs you're healing, even when it doesn't feel like it, right? Because let's talk about some counterintuitive signs that you're actually healing, even if it doesn't feel like progress in the conventional sense. And so first, you might be feeling more, not less. And this gets a lot of people because when we start doing the work, or you're doing any work within, therapy sessions, when you're truly healing, emotions you've kept under wraps might start surfacing. You might cry more easily, feel anger you didn't know was there, experience grief for loss you thought you moved past, and understand it's because your body feels safe now to explore the feelings that were inside of you. A lot of times we operate based on what has hurt us, and we don't realize that you just numbed your way through a lot of stuff. So when you start feeling, you're going to start feeling it because your body's like, oh, okay, I feel comfortable now to feel all this. So let's do it. And the body wants to do that. Like it's meant to feel, so understand that this increased emotional sensitivity isn't a sign that you're getting worse. It's often a sign that your system finally feels safe, like I was talking about. It feels safe enough to process what it couldn't before. The emotions were always there. You just weren't in a position to feel them. And I remember a client telling me, I thought I was supposed to feeling better by now, but I'm crying almost every day. Understand that when we explored further, she realized she was finally grieving childhood experiences she never had space to grieve before. It wasn't regression, it was actual release. And second, your relationships might get more complicated before they get simpler. As you heal, you start recognizing dynamics that no longer serve you. So you might set boundaries that others aren't used to. You might speak truths you previously kept silent. This can create temporary turbulence, even conflict, but that friction is often a necessary part of the recalibrating the relationship to match your growing authenticity. The discomfort isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're no longer willing to abandon yourself to keep the peace. And third, you might be more aware of what you don't want than what you do want. Healing often begins with recognizing what doesn't feel aligned before you have a clear vision of what does. You might find yourself saying no more often, stepping back from certain commitments or relationships, creating space without necessarily knowing what will fill it yet. Yet is the main word. Okay. So this in-between place can feel uncomfortable and sometimes even scary. But there's a profound wisdom in this clearing process, in making room for what's next by first releasing what's not serving your growth. Fourth, you might feel more vulnerable, not less. Understand that true healing often involves taking down some of the armor you've built up over the years. Well, this creates the potential for a deeper connection, and more authentic living can also leave you feeling more sensitive to the world around you. So this vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. It's choosing to live with your heart open, even knowing that open hearts sometimes get hurt. Fifth, you might experience what seems like backsliding, moments where old patterns resurface or you react in ways you thought you've moved beyond. This doesn't mean your healing isn't working. It just means you're human. Healing is not a straight line. I think people get really this mixed up. It's a spiral where we revisit similar themes, but hopefully with growing awareness and compassion each time. Okay, so those moments of seeming regression are often when the deepest learning happens. If we can approach them with curiosity rather than judgment, and that's a big thing, like lean into the curiosity of it. And finally, one of the clearest signs of genuine healing, you become more gentle with yourself. You stop expecting perfection. You recognize when you're being harsh with yourself and choose compassion instead. You treat yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a dear friend going through a difficult time, because we really get really hard on ourselves each and every time when it comes to something that we felt like we should have been over and are not. And this self-compassion isn't indulgence or letting yourself off the hook. It's creating the internal conditions where growth becomes possible, because we don't heal through shame or harsh criticism. We heal through love, through understanding, through creating enough safety within ourselves to face what feels too difficult to face alone. For those of us who grew up in environments where gentleness wasn't modeled, where strength wasn't equated with pushing through rather than tending to wounds, This shift to self-compassion can feel particularly foreign and just really uncomfortable, but it's also really powerful with doing this. So if your healing journey doesn't look like a neat Instagram-worthy transformation, if it's messy and complicated and sometimes painful, know that you're probably on the right track. Real healing rarely fits into a tidy before and after narrative. It's a complex, non-linear journey of reclaiming parts of yourself that got lost along the way and discovering parts you never knew existed. Okay, so understand that with all this can be a lot. So how do you know if you're really just kind of tapping into that space, really healing? Understand that healing takes time and it's a journey of self-compassion, right? But if you're checking in with yourself regularly, challenging old patterns and feeling your emotions deeply, then you're on the right path. Healing doesn't mean you're always happy or perfectly put together. I want to just make that really clear. It does not mean that. It means you're making room to experience all of you. So there's no good and bad, just all parts of you and everything in between, right? So remember, it's okay to take it slow and acknowledge where you are. Healing is a process, not a destination. Some days you'll feel like you're moving backward, and that's part of moving forward too. So when you heal, you become more available to yourself, to your loved ones, to your purpose in this world. You bring more of your gifts, your wisdom, your unique light. And we need that. We need you, not a perfect, never wounded version of you, but the real you with all your complexity and humanity. So as you navigate this journey of distinguishing between healing and numbing, be gentle with yourself, honor the ways you've survived, and keep taking small, brave steps toward the fullness of your own life, your own heart, and your own truth. Because that journey toward wholeness, it's not just healing for you, it's healing for all of us. So as we come to close today's conversation, I would want to acknowledge that this work of moving from numbing to healing is ongoing. It's not something we figure out once and for all, right? But a practice we return to throughout our lives. There will be days when you face your feelings with courage and compassion, and there will be days when numbing feels like the only option available to you. Both are part of just being human. So the invitation isn't to do this perfectly, but to bring growing awareness and kindness to wherever you find yourself on any given day. So I'd love to hear about your own experiences distinguishing between healing and numbing. Share your insights in the comments or connect with me on Instagram or TikTok at Moving Beyond You, or my Instagram at IamSamantha.s. Until next time, remember, you are not meant to be filtered, edited, or muted. You're meant to be fully, gloriously alive with all that messiness and beauty that entails and that full aliveness. It's always waiting for you, just beneath the surface of whatever you've been using to numb. But I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for every step you take towards your own healing. See you next time.